It is the 19th of December in 2025, and we are here on Talented Universe on the NDB Media Network. And I would like to say hi to my co-host today. Marcia, how are you doing with the festive background of yours?
All right. Yeah, I've got my festive background.
You didn't know how to answer that, huh?
Well, I'm here in, yeah, I am here in Florida, and yeah, it's almost the end of the year, and I am ready to chat. Oh my goodness, I have some feedback. Michael, can you take this?
Oh,
I got to
sure.
shut
Yeah,
something
sure.
off.
Yeah. Um, I would like to introduce our wonderful guest today, Keegan Hughes. Keegan, how are you doing this fine day?
I'm doing fantastic, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great too. So since Marcia's having some background, just text me, Marcia, when you can, when you're good again. Um, Now, the first question I'll ask you is, how did you get into acting?
Um, Honestly, that's I got started at a really young age. I was actually, I was one of those dramatic kids who was doing plays and everything and little skits in the living room. You can ask my mom from day one. But then I actually started off in visual arts and kind of gathered a little bit of a background in that before I jumped in like the seventh grade. I was about like 13 years old, and like I just started right off with Shakespeare and did A Midsummer's Night Dream, and it was really cool because like my mom was actually my art teacher at that school. I actually went to the same school she taught at, and what was really neat is that when I actually started really investing into theater and everything like that, it was kind of a natural fit, and everyone on the back end was telling my mom, they were like, I know he's got the visual art background, but like maybe we push him in that direction. And ever since then, I've just been running with it, and I found my passion. So,
Well, that's great. Well, Marcia's got her microphone and stuff fixed now, so I'll go back to Marcia and then I'll come back to me later.
Yeah, I have to apologize. I had two screens running at the same time, so I was listening to myself, which is not good.
No.
But yes, I'm back and straight. So, Keegan, you grew up in a kind of large family. I had five brothers and sisters. So, and you're one of six, right?
yeah, yeah, kind of splayed out. Like it's a lot of step siblings and a lot of half siblings, but with our bond at this point, it's we're all very very close.
Mhm.
Originally, like I was the youngest. It was just my older brother and I. My like he and I just grew up with like our mom and dad, but then after a little bit of a divorce and everything, like kind of through a couple of years, I ended up acquiring two younger stepbrothers, and then we've been brothers for so long and been through so much that it's at this point it's interchangeable. Like in fact, we have the same mannerisms of each other. And then my dad ended up having two more kids. Right around when I was 15, I had a younger brother, and like even though like in our family, like it's like, oh, technically they're half siblings. If when you put us all together, even with my step siblings, it's like we all kind of look similar and we all have the same kind of attitudes and everything like that. So it's like we really are like a little set. And so yeah, no, it's a really big family. It's a lot of keeping track of everyone. So
Yeah, big families can be a lot of fun and challenging too, having a lot of the brother sister stuff. You're never alone. You really
oh man,
you always have
oh
somebody
yeah.
to talk to.
Hmm.
And to talk to your parents, hey, mom and dad, you got that
Exactly.
going.
Exactly. I'm usually the guy that comes in and like with my younger siblings and my older brother, they're like, "Can you go talk to mom and dad?" And I'm like, I got you, I got you. So it's like
Hmm.
someone's
Hmm.
got to step in every once in a while, but we all cycle in and out too. So no one's
Yeah.
ever really alone.
Hmm. And I know a lot of people are here because of your vertical acting, which
Hmm.
we'll talk about too. I have to jump to the latest one that I watched was Song of My Mother's Tears,
Oh yeah.
which, which had a lot of emotion tied into it. You know, you talked about brothers and sisters, and that was a brother sister kind of thing. And so, what did you think when you first read the script? What did you think of your part and the whole?
Honestly, it was a really cool kind of straight up with like the vertical sphere, especially like uh, back when it was published. I think it was around March. It was still pretty heavily like CEO focused and like pretty
Mm-hmm.
like
Billionaire.
there exactly right. And so and while we did have a couple of those playing through, the real soul of that piece was the bond and the conflict between the siblings. And in the script,
Yes.
I actually played the adopted brother
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
uh, the kind of breakdown of it is that a billionaire, or I guess before she became a billionaire, this young woman was doing her best to keep her young daughter alive who had a congenital heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
and money was really tight. However, when dad kind of jumps on in, there's a lot of conflict within the family, and this young brother, young sister, and this mother, who are the real soul of that family, end up getting separated. And the young girl grows up in an orphanage away from everything. The dad kind of, exits the scene, and then mom takes that resolve to really, you know, like become successful. She becomes the CEO of a really successful company and ends up establishing a whole foundation for kids with congenital heart disease in the hopes
Yeah.
that someday she can find this daughter. And along the way, she ends up finding this son as well, who she adds to her little unit, who has a heart shaped birthmark similar to her son, similar to herself, and similar to her daughter. So it's kind of like, I was added into the set. But what's cool is that then, as the years passed, and the younger brother, who was wonderfully played by my friend Cameron Porras, um,
Yes.
he like that pain kind of manifests into a lot of security and rigidity, and making sure that when eventually the idea that this young girl may be out there, that they can find their sister again, that they're making sure it's the right sister. And so when push comes to shove, um,
Literally, almost.
yeah, no, when push comes to shove, as it does in most verticals, a competition is put on, and the sole playing of the violin, which was um, violin is like this kind of like running motif throughout the script, that the soul of music unites this family. And the mother was a very skilled violinist, and that passed on to the little girl amongst all this chaos. But he puts on a violin competition, hoping someone can come through and actually play the violin in such a way that she can identify her daughter. And when they're at this event, that's when the real crux of the story begins. And uh, another girl from the orphanage that the daughter was raised in ends up jumping in and trying to take the spot. And she ends up kind of, fooling everyone. Kirby Elwood like jumped in as the villain. That was one
Yeah.
of her first like villain roles at the time. And she just like really stole the show and stole everyone's, hearts. And that just left poor Lexi to just kind of like, go back to the orphanage and really think everything's done with, especially with the rejection from her brother and her mother at the same time. So it's a really complex story, but then my
It
character
really
just kind of
is.
jumped in, and he's there as this little bridge where he's like, look, I may not be directly related to the family, but I'm here, like, and I really do think there's something to you. I see something like a little bit of a soul, and I see something in them, and it's the same. And so maybe if I can be here to bridge that gap, then we can figure it out. And it was a really cool kind of like tucked in supporting role. Like I was just there as like, a little bit of a just like a foil in all of the evil plans, who kind of saw through everything. But the fact that people couldn't see what I was saying was the truth was also kind of like, a really big movement in the character development of all that. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've had Kirby on the
Mhm.
show,
Mm.
and it was fun seeing her in a villain role as well. And And I thought you, with your part, you really did well at being that kind of bellwether, that person who saw things kind of objectively in a way, and was sort of the person to whom she could go, and you knew, people knew that you were on her side, kind of, and that you really wanted the truth, and you
Yeah.
were going to make sure that that came out if you had anything at all possible to do with it. So thank you for that role, and and you are also a musician, so you kind of did that kind of be was that kind of an attractive point of that piece as well?
A little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping in, like I actually played the violin a little bit as a kid as well, and so just kind of like being around that kind of space and hearing that kind of
Mm-hmm.
music is always a throwback. But no, yeah, like as a musician and everything like that, like, and I'm a very amateur musician compared to like some of the folks I know. But like just the soul of music kind of like speaks to everybody, and if like we can get a little bit more of that out there and just like communicate that like that's a language, especially in this day and age where we all speak very different languages, that
Yeah.
like truth and music are something that I think that this world could use a little bit more of. And being around that kind of space is, and being able to be induction that like really exemplifies that, it was a real treat to be a part of.
Yeah. And to continuing with kind of your music bent, to jump in that Wayback Machine that we talked about before we got on, which I like to go in, the Wayback Machine. You did a music video for
Oh yeah.
Sleep that
Yeah.
was really popular, that really got popular. Um, and how did that come about? Because you're a fan.
Yeah, so the Sleep My Chemical Romance tribute
Hmm.
music video, that it's what's wild is that we did that as a group of fans, just out of the blue. Everyone involved in that production, including my director who brought me on, who's an old high school friend of mine, Jesse LaBelle, visionary director, visionary filmmaker, and an all around just great guy and a fantastic dad now too.
Hmm.
Um, he's always been this kind of cornerstone of like creativity and just like raw radical kind of like emotion. And so when all of us as teenagers were listening to My Chemical Romance, we were in that crowd of like
Yeah.
theater kids. There were show tunes and there was also emo rock music going on all the time, especially in our dressing room. It was really cool because I was actually in undergrad at the time, and it was around 2016 that My Chemical Romance's 10th anniversary was rolling up, and we were like, you know what, let's get together and do something. And I had just heard chatter about it, and like I had heard ideas about it, and I was like, that'd be awesome to be a part of. And then Jesse approached me and was like, hey, are you able to drive down? Like, I know you're in Flagstaff going to school, but like, are you able to drive back down to Phoenix for just a weekend, and we'll bang this out? Because like I rented a studio and I've got like a whole bunch of funding, so like I think it'd be a really good treat. And so
Mm.
um, it was just a passion project that really took hold of even the owners of the studio. Like they were there the entire day. They were like trying to figure stuff out with us to like expand like what the studio could do. We actually put so much fog in that building that the fire department got called, and that's actually when we had to wrap that day. But no, it was such a great project to be a part of, and like the finished product is something that's like just raw and um, just really speaks to the heart, especially of like the lore and like the story that My Chemical Romance was putting together,
Hmm.
the world they had at the time for like the Black Parade.
Hmm.
Um, but like it's really interesting because now we're almost to 2026 and we're coming up on the 20 year, and it's
Hmm.
it's kind of wild to like think that that music video is 10 years ago now, but like it's still really great. Every once in a while I'll go back and watch it, especially with like some old friends. Whenever I go back to
Hmm.
Arizona, I meet up with that group and we always kind of like rehash things. There's an old film as well that we actually did, like that was like our first short film that we put together. And what's cool is that I think all of that was a primer for like what Sleep was going to be. And what's cool is that we got a really great response from the community too. And like
Yeah.
Jesse said that he was reached out to, and that like I guess a band member or two from My Chemical Romance was like So like, you know, it's a really
Awesome.
cool nod, you know, and so just it's a really cool thing to be a part of
Mhm.
and just be there. So
And people kind of wanted you to continue, y'all to continue with more from the album. I saw that there
yeah,
were comments that have you
man,
had
I
that? Yeah.
man, I wish that's going to be all Jesse and hopefully somebody kind of communicating there. I would love to be a part of that, especially expanding because you know My Chemical Romance is like you know kind of active again, and it's
Mhm.
just really cool to like I don't know, it's kind of like our teenage years are kind of back in full force. But you know, if we get the call, I'm definitely there. So
Mhm. And one more thing that kind of extends into some of your musical background. You mentioned some of the productions that you were in, and one that you mentioned is a favorite of mine, Little Shop of Horrors.
oh yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, musical theater of Anthem, Little Shop of Horrors. That was one of my like first community theater shows. Actually, I remember driving a car full of us up for the auditions, and like you know we were in Phoenix. Like you know it's kind of like the boroughs. There's a bunch of like you know things kind of splayed all over the place, but we had to drive to technically a whole other town to go audition. And when we were there, like it was just such a great community. And then the production itself, that was a treat. What's
Mhm.
cool about it is that I got to play the dentist, Orange Crivello, like, and I
Oh,
really
that's a
got to
great
mix it up,
role.
right? And what was interesting is that I guess we learned this later on from our director Keith Huff. He really he was saying that you know in the callbacks, the original idea was that the our guy that was going to play Seymour, Derek, like, and he went on to play Seymour. He he was like, oh, I think he's going to play dentist, and I think Keegan's going to play Seymour. I think like you know because Derek was a bigger guy, his typing was definitely like you know big and like kind of
Mhm.
foreboding, so like natural fit. And then like I was like you know a little dinky guy, and like you know like they were like, oh yes, Seymour, and I was like perfect. But just for fun, we had this callback where he was like, why don't we just like switch it up and then like Keegan, you play dentist, and Derek, you play Seymour. And during that callback, like you know, it's like when I get into callbacks, like I just really wake up and I start making fun choices and everything like that. And like I started crawling all over Derek, like in the dentist chair and everything like that, just for fun. Because like we were like, it's the end of the night, it's the end of the callbacks. We all think we know where everything's going, and like Derek just really played into it, and we committed both. And apparently that callback he told us later on, he was like, it was so hilarious and it was so funny seeing the tropes switched up like that, that he was
Mhm.
like, we had to,
This is
we had
it.
to. And both of us had the vocal prowess to do either or. So it was like, you know, he was like, cool, we have the freedom just to go. And so it was a really great production. And like Chris Woe, the vocal director, absolutely blew it out of the water. He kind of came out of nowhere for the musical theater of Anthem and just like really like took that production under his belt and like he just really took the girls like gosh, I'm blanking on their name, like the Rockettes, and just really like took their part and punched it up to every way he could because the young vocalists we had at Musical Theater of Anthem were really top tier echelon. And so like the music direction and just the overall production was able to go in like kind of a different route than your typical Little Shop of Horrors, but it also really hung on to the soul and like we hit those notes and hit those music in a really really great way that like you know I think it's really rare to see in community theater. And so yeah.
Oh, and doing theater where you can get that immediate feedback from the audience.
Oh
How
yeah.
much do you
Oh yeah.
enjoy that?
I mean, I during that production, I got to walk into the audience like at the end of the dentist song, and you know, I always picked one unfortunate little soul, and like we got up in people's faces because it was such an intimate house,
Mhm.
and I think that was part of it because these people really felt like they were a part of that show. Like when we were running, we used to run up through the aisles and through the audience, and we'd be like harmonizing with these people
Oh,
like
that's
and half the time they're singing along and it was like the entire theater was shaking, right? Just because it's such a classic too, everyone knows those songs. Like we had to do it justice, and the fact that like you know we were able to hang in that regard, we had everybody jumping out of their seats, young and old. So
okay. I want to see this production, so you're gonna have to do it all again.
I will call Jackie
Sounds like
over at
so
Musical
much
Theater.
fun. I'm probably gonna
MTA,
go watch
I'm
the
calling.
movie again. And then there was Les Miserables, which is another one of your favorites.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that was another throwback. That was a little bit down the ways. That was actually I was a part of a community theater at that point that a lot of us from the local high school had basically been the inaugural casts in a lot of their shows, and so Les Mis was super ambitious for them to do in their first year, but the amount of community support we all got, it was kind of kind of insane to just to see like also like multiple theaters in the area pool their resources and their expertise just because like Les Mis is such a just
Huge.
a
Mhm.
it's so huge, and the fact that we were teenagers taking it on, like it's those things can never exactly end well, and like I'm not gonna lie, like that was when I kind of discovered it was like, okay, I think we know where my tenorness kind of caps out, but it also really helped like the maturity of all of our voices like just explode. And in terms of storytelling, a lot of us like were actors first and then singers second, and then it really challenged us to kind of keep both at the forefront. And Les Mis is one of those shows, like any Victor Hugo novel that's adapted a into a musical. It's big, it's epic. You got to keep up with it, and it's a lot of fun. And honestly, Les Mis still is like it's one of those things that like I don't think anyone's ever really going to be able to put down. It's like you may be like, I've heard this melody a little bit, but the people are always going to sing, and
Yeah.
the barricade's always going to get raised. So,
Uh, so going from the stage to the vertical world,
mm.
you're out here with the stage, you're reaching out, and then you have to come in. How was that transition for you?
So I it was really interesting because I actually avoided LA and the film world for a long time. I was one of those guys that was like, I'm not good enough. I don't think I can do it. And so when I got here, like the landscape was totally changed. My big mentor when I got here, he was like our big alumni from Northern Arizona University. He's been on Castle, like as his big credit, but he's been in just a huge amount of productions. Seamus Dever, um, he kind of got me going, and he got me on the right resources and the right track. And when I was there on Actors Access, it was very interesting to kind of see where like just the amount of these verticals were there, and wanting to be a working actor, paying the dues. It was student films, it was like shorts, it was anything I could get my hands on to build my credits and build my expertise behind the camera. um, and so when I happened upon my first vertical, it was mind blowing because the chatter at the time was, like a lot of people were like, oh, yes, the vertical world. Yes, the verticals. The verticals. And you're like, what's the read on these? But then you show up to be on a production, and these things are full. They're full productions. They're fully geared, and like coming freshly from a theater scene onto a film scene, it was like, oh, showing up to a vertical is like actually getting real experience. It's like, it's like I can do extra work and show up to a AAA film set of some kind, but then showing up to a vertical is just the same thing. It's more fast paced, it's more ambitious, and being surrounded by similarly aged, like also like filmmakers was like, whoa, okay, this is something. And so it got me really interested. And so I actually, when I came here, I was only in a couple of productions at first, and every time I was on them, I was like, this is thrilling, this is great. Like the amount of like friends and like community members I meet is huge. And then I actually ended up taking a little bit of a break because I was a part of a theater production here in Los Angeles, and
Mm.
that spanned about 4 months. And we were working so hard in the production, which was a 5.5 hour long theater piece, originally called Hellas uh, by School of Night Theater. It was ambitious and it was huge, but it took a lot of my time, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get onto the vertical sets for a little while. But what was fantastic though is that back even during that production, I remember it was like there came a make or break point where I was like, hey, like I have to, like I'm getting offered this role, and it was actually Song of My Mother's Tears. And I told production, I was like, this is a really great story. And like, I have to jump in there. And like, I got a little bit of flack from production, like just also because they were like, oh, but a vertical. And what's great though is that Jen Albert, who actually works, she's like she's half of, theater of night, or School of Night Theater, I should say. She's actually one of the biggest stunt coordinators and intimacy coordinators in the vertical sphere. And she was like, now go with my blessing, go do it. And I was like, fantastic. And so I got to jump back into the world. And it was funny because I had theater and film kind of competing for attention, like in my head. And the film was so like, it kind of spoke a little bit more naturally to me at the point, even in the vertical sphere, that I was like, heck yeah, man, we're just going to jump in here and like really commit to it. Because something cool about verticals is that these tropes, these characters and these story beats that are hit, it's something that like I've kind of like, it parallels with like a lot of like things I studied back in undergrad, because like I'm a huge theory and a huge study nut, like a huge technique and like kind of like, like really diving deep into these things. I was pulled to study Commedia dell'arte. Like that's just one of the many like art forms that we touched upon in like, like in Northern Arizona's department. But like we really dove into Commedia. And what's interesting is that like with those story beats and those characters, where that whole art form is so driven by those exact things as well, I was able to draw parallels and kind of like almost bring like, I don't know, I started playing with like being like, oh, like, I see like, this particular day player at the time, like let's say I was playing Prince Guillaume in Serve Me, Ball Girl Heiress with Drama Box, right? This really fun European prince. And I remember during the audition, I was like, I'm just going to play him like a fun Arlecchino, which is like, the servant character who, he's like technically the protagonist most of the time because he's the most relatable one, keeping up with all these rich people and all these like weird things going on. And he's just like, I'm just going to do my thing and I'm just going to have fun. And you know what? Like, we're going to get the job done, but you know what? Not all the way at my expense. And, it's like I've been able to bring some of that into my work, and it's been a lot of fun. And now as like, I started off like, doing a lot of extra work, a lot of day player work. And now we're stepping into like a lot of major supporting roles and a lot of leads and everything like that. It's driving the tropes a little bit deeper and a little bit like it's bringing more nuance to them and bringing more life to them too. Because what's really cool about like the writing and like also the directionality of like the whole like vertical sector right now, I've been noticing like there's been a lot more heart and a lot more like, I don't know, genuine like story in these productions. And it's just so cool to like kind of like see like life being breathed in from all sides of these like, these creatives, like whether they're across the pond or they're here or, we're working vice versa, we're all over the place. It's like there's a lot more breath being like, kind of driven into these guys. And it's just a pleasure to be a part of. Like, it's really cool to be like kind of like
right there.
Yeah, especially with like some of the colleagues I've worked with, like getting to see some of their work. Like Shane Davis is like a really great friend of mine. I always like reach out to him whenever like I have a question or anything, and like he's always like one of the first guys with like a really genuine down to earth answer. But also the guy is just such a fantastic actor. He fully commits, and like it's like he's one of those guys that brings like a genuine like really down to earth flair to everything he touches. And it's just like it's really cool to like get to run with those kind of guys, especially like as a younger guy, and like being like I got someone to look up to, but also like this is like the pond we get to swim in right now. It's a really cool place to be.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, let's go on to you kind of touched on a couple things I was going to talk about, but when you got into verticals the first time, before you took your little break to stage again, and you would tell your friends, or they would ask you what you were doing, and if you just said, oh, I'm on a vertical, and they gave you a funny look and they didn't know what you were talking about, how would you try to explain it to them what you were actually doing?
Oh, okay. Yeah. This.
And
Oh
it
my
still
gosh.
goes on, I'm sure.
Yeah. 'Cause I'm also a bartender in my free time. It's that's a passion, right? Not just like for the survival aspect of it, but also like
But
I
you
work at
enjoy
a
it.
theater
His
bar. Oh my
stories.
gosh, yeah. And I work at a theater bar as well, so it's like a lot of
Oh, that
well,
explains that.
all
Yeah.
of us exactly right. All of us on the payroll, we're all working actors of alike, and so whenever like people are like, oh yeah, so like what kind of productions have you been in? It's like I'm like, oh yes, the vertical world. They're like, I've heard of those, but is it like, huh? It's like it's you know I kind of take it back to I'm like, how you're used to watching YouTube videos and everyone's like, no, turn your phone so you can really see it. Turn your phone so you can really see it. Someone actually just went, what if I made something that I don't have to turn my phone for, right? And it was like they were like, all right, I'm hooked, and I was like, all right, but then in this day and age, we're moving so fast, like it's hard to really sit down and like take in a movie. Like it's almost like a pleasure nowadays when I'm like, I have the time to sit down and actually digest like, a good film or like a good story. And, it's like, let's say you're sitting at a bus stop and, like you missed your bus and you're like, all right, I got 10 minutes to kill. But like, I don't want to like totally rot my brain scrolling on YouTube or Instagram or something like that. You can hop on one of these verticals and these like, and it's convenient because you don't have to turn your phone sideways. It's just, you can go ahead and watch. And what's fantastic is like, you can get a snippet or two of these little episodes and you can get hooked, right? And so by the time your bus pulls back around in 10 minutes, you've been able to stick with like, a little bit of a story. You can like get like kind of like hooked. You can get your little dopamine rush. You can scroll, like you can get that like, beat out of the way. But at the same time, it's like, it's kind of challenging your brain a little bit with like the short form aspect of it to pay attention a little bit. And it's fun, it's not a game. It's not like like crazy interactive, but at the same time, it's like you get invested in these things. And like, it's like I warn people sometimes, because I'm like, based on everything I said, I'm like, you don't have to turn your phone, you ain't got to do this. You get 1 to 2 episodes, and I'm like, I know you guys like watching Big Bang Theory. So like maybe you hop on one of these and you find something that exactly kind of scratches that itch, because the amount of content that's out there, you will be able to find it. And then I usually warn people, I'm like, usually when you find something, you're hooked. Like it's kind of dangerous like that.
And the algorithm throws even more at you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I just started popping up on my family's algorithm. I learned at Thanksgiving. Like
there you go.
Like we're a household name now, baby. So.
There you go.
And what keeps you going back? Is it exciting for you to do a vertical?
Yeah, honestly, it's always the people. Like usually I get hooked by a good story. Like I'm a storyteller first, but then it's like when I moved here to Los Angeles, like I had this saying. I'm like, I just want to, I want to do great work. I want to meet great people, and then have the great times in between, right? And it really is the people. Every single time, every single production I'm on, the teams, the cast, the production, just the camaraderie you find on these things, because everyone's there, everyone's invested trying to tell these stories. And that's, as a storyteller, there's nothing better. Like, we're all doing the thing, but when you can meet your tribe that like, and you're all doing the thing at the same time, that's what keeps bringing me back, man. Really.
Yeah, I can see that. We've heard that from other actors that have been on that, and they get so excited, they say, when they come on a new set and they meet some of the people that they've had on other shoots, and they get all excited.
Yes. It's huge. It immediately just brings a spark to things. And what's cool is that, like, being the theater bartender, like over at the Broadwater here in Los Angeles, it's like we have 4 theaters all together, 2 on either side. And so like you get the vertical community kind of, coming down. It's like, oh, one of my friends is in a show, and like I'll see one of my castmates and I'm like, cool. What do you want to drink too? Like I get to be your host now. It's like the community here is just, it's the biggest small town you could ever be in, man. It really is.
Well, that is wonderful in that respect. Um, what? Oh, no, I'll go back to Marcia and then I'll rephrase this later.
Well, I wanted to also dive into some of your writing, which enthralled me. The prospect that of your ever again
Oh,
and
Ever
evermore
Again and Evermore, the book that goes by many names. Yeah. Um, no, yeah,
fantasy.
I'm a big fantasy nerd writer. If you ask anybody, like I'm the Dragon Kid. Like if anybody remembers growing up on recess and it's like, like that dragon kid on the playground, like that's me. I grew up and I never stopped really with my stories. I've been writing that bad boy since I've been about like 6, 7 years old,
Oh,
and I've stuck with it. I've stuck with it actually. Like I just reorganized, but I have a whole shelf of journals that are full of like manuscripts, world building, like, oh, this is how my magic system works. But also, like, I'm gonna scratch that out, and then I have a better idea over here. There is just so much of it. And then, actually, about like 5 years ago, like like or especially like during the pandemic when I had a lot of time on my hands and I was going through like a lot of like my old stuff, being at home, I kind of picked it back up. Like acting kind of like became like the forefront, like especially like in college and everything. But then I ended up picking it back up, and I had so much material, and I was like, man, and this is good. Like if I was fresh out of Game of Thrones, or I was like like I was like I need something to scratch like that itch. I was like, man, for a 6 to 10 to 13 year old, this is pretty good, man. So it turned into modernizing kind of things, and so I've been doing a lot of work on that, and now honestly, I'm just at the point where I need to sit down and write it, and I
mhm.
think jumping back in is going to be a lot of fun. It's a whole 6 book series. Like I've got everything planned out, but like honestly, now I just need to do the manual labor of it. So
That sounds intriguing and wonderful. Fantasy writing is amazing, and people are eating it up.
yeah,
Literally,
no, I
it
was
is.
yeah, no, it's thrilling to kind of see like how it's still got a place in like like everyone like in the mainstream of everything like that. And so if if and when I get this this story finally written, and we
Mhm.
look around at getting it published, like I'm happy that there's probably going to be a space for it.
Yeah, and video game also is apparently has been a a bit of a part of your pastime activities now.
Oh yeah,
Specifically, the virtual world, is Minecraft part of that? Has that been part of it, or?
that's a little bit after my generation.
Mm.
That's my little brother. He's the Minecraft king, honest to gosh. Like the redstone like components and electrical engineering that kid does is wow, next level. But no, I was worse, honestly. My game was much 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 worse. I was a World of Warcraft kid,
That
like
was my
through and
next
through.
thought.
Yeah, but it was interesting too because I got started. I got like I was always into video games like from a young age. Like my older brother was like he always had Mortal Kombat. Mega Man was
Oh my
huge.
goodness.
Actually, the reason why I always have long hair is actually because of a Mega Man character. So it's like like I always there's always been a theme of that running through my life. But then World of Warcraft was a way for me to spend time with my grandpa. I actually found out about a grandpa a little bit of ways through my life, and it was crazy because it was like when we met up, like it was like even at like I think I was about 10 years old when I actually like met him. Like it was like, oh, oh, like you look like me. That's weird. But like then we started hanging out, and it was like, okay, he's a fantasy nerd too. Like if you want to talk about dragons and everything like that, like he was Gandalf the Grey, and like he
Right.
legit had staffs around the house, and like dragon statues and everything. But he was one of the first computer programmers and like IT guys of like the age. And so computers were huge, and he was really into online gaming, and like EverQuest was like a thing whenever I went over to his house. And so like he was like, maybe we try out World of Warcraft. And I was like, yeah, cool, all right. And he helped me build my first computer, and we actually always played side by side. And whenever I played, it was usually with my grandpa. And then eventually World of Warcraft hooked me in, and then it was just a part of my life. But then it's cool because that also brought me, that actually really inspired my fantasy novel as well, because back in high school I ended up started writing on the online forums. Like if you had an account, you know, you could like go online and everything, and we would all role play online. And I kid you not, we would be in character, the acting and the writing kind of combining there, until like 3 a.m. in the morning. Some of them would be like, you know, on different time zones, and they'd be like, oh, I got to go to work, I got to wake up here, but like, you know, I'll be right on. And we kept this story going. And like, what's going to be cool is that I hope that eventually when I get this book of mine published and out there, like those souls will be able to look at and be like, wait a minute, that's us, you know. And so like, that's the cool thing, is that World of Warcraft, like, you know, it is a doozy of a video game. Like that, it is amazing, the world that they've crafted and the directions they've gone and the amount of communities they've been able to serve, but also the amount of people they've been able to bring together. Like, that's the good stuff, you know? So.
Yeah. Initially, when I remember when video games started to become popular, I guess it was sort of like when comic books started to become popular. People said, "Oh no, it's going to rot your brain. It's going to, you know, it's going to take you to places where we don't want you to go." However, I have seen communities bridging all kinds of gaps in culture through online video gaming, like World of Warcraft, like Minecraft, and yeah, it's here to stay, and has been really utilized in schools and with therapy, all kinds of things.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. And another thing that intrigued me about you when I was researching you is that you have a statement up about being here in the now, about being present, and there are a lot of great teachers that help us be present and notice what's going on. One of them is Eckhart Tolle. He's a German, and I don't know if you have heard of him, but and right now you have everything you need, you know, everything. Tell me about how you feel about being in the now.
Well, it's funny you bring up Eckhart Tolle, because like being in the now is like that statement is out there as much to people that like find me as much as it is to myself. Being in the now is it is an ever present thing that you have to work on. And as a young man, like, you know, like you deal with like I was like fresh out of college, and like I was like, oh, I'm not good enough for LA as an actor. Oh, maybe I'm not good enough as a person. Nah. And like a lot of people get filled with doubt, and like, you know, it's nothing to scoff at, it's nothing to shy away from, you know. And it's like I struggled with it for a long time. And I traveled up to Seattle. Like I went and kind of explored the world. And as much as I was exploring the world and meeting people and like kind of gathering experience, I would think I was really trying to learn about myself. And what was cool is that like I ended up coming back home from Seattle, and most of my family had moved. Like my mom no longer lived like in the same house that we grew up in. Like my dad had moved to a fresh, like brand new town up north. And so I spent a lot of time up there. And what was interesting is that like that town actually felt more like home, because it was a little bit kind of out in the sticks a little bit. And like growing up in northern Arizona, like not in northern Arizona, but like just kind of like North Phoenix, like we were always in the developments. So we were always in kind of the sticks ourselves. And so it brought me back and really got me questioning and really makes you think, you know, and like all that doubt came back up. And I remember, it was actually because of a theater production we met. I went and auditioned for like my first theater production postgraduate, like, you know, post college. It's a little community theater production, Prescott Center of the Arts over in Arizona. And it was John Logan's Red. And it's a 2-person show, all about Mark Rothko and his assistant, just kind of really exploring life and getting down and dirty about what art means and what it can bring up and what it can do. And it doesn't hold any of its punches. It's some nitty gritty stuff. And as a kid with the visual arts background, my mom had like Rothko's, she had like Georgia O'Keeffe, like a lot of that in the house. Like we had just so many different like kind of inspirations around, and it like kind of makes you appreciate those things. But then when I got to be in that show, it really started making my mind really explode. And then my Rothko, who I was in the show with, Bruce Thompson, Bruce really took me under his wing. During that production, the pandemic hit. We had cast the show, and it was like, all right, no more show, right? But the director, Don Langford, Bruce, and myself, we were all like, well, what if we just kept it going? And like we rehearsed, but like Bruce and I will be out in the yard, socially distanced with masks on. Don can be inside, because like the thing was too is that they were both older gentlemen, so it was like I was like, look, I don't want to get you guys sick, and it was like, but they were like, no, but we still want to do this. And so it was like, all right, interesting, you know. And so I had all this stuff going on while we were rehearsing the show, and with Bruce taking me under his wing, you know, it was like almost like a little bit of like just a great private mentorship. Like we both got to know each other, and like he was going through stuff as well, like this as like an older gentleman, like some of like the mental things he was facing were like, it was really interesting, because I was like, dang, like, you know, this you never really figure it out. And so that almost made me feel as assured as it did chaotic. And one day, like, Bruce comes up to me and he goes, hey, it just never occurred to me until now, but, and he slaps down a book into my hand. He goes, you're a reader. He goes, read this. There's a YouTube version. If you need to listen to it, go ahead. And it was Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now.
Oh my God.
And like, it was really interesting, because just at that juncture, like, it was just like, that was just like, you know, just a hand, like that little hand, he was like, just read this, you know. And it really started kind of making me dive into mindfulness. Like I'd studied it a little bit in the past, but like I never really got like a firm grasp on it. And I think, like, you know, that was kind of like a little bit of a sign, you know, but it was, you know, it was just really huge. And with being in the now, it really taught me that it's not about leaving it out the door. It's not about, you know, like kind of doing better because of yesterday. It's about just, you know, radically accepting the circumstances and doing your best with what you have, accepting that, you know, there's pain in the past. You don't need to identify with it. There may be pain in the future. You don't need to worry about it, and just being here. And so it was really great, because then after that year, that was kind of the start of my journey coming down to Los Angeles. And I think that was like a really great trajectory. So
Amazing. Wow. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you for relating that. We're almost at our time's end, but I wanted to also talk about your survival skills. I have a brother who I call him Indiana Joe. He's a librarian. He's a reference librarian, but he also taught Outward Bound. You know, adventuring. You know, he's hung from the side of mountains on the snow and gone down archaeological digs and things like that. And he would teach people to survive out there. And he
Yeah.
told the story about they were whitewater rafting, and they were on the beach, and so and they were trying to figure out what can you eat? You don't have anything. What do you eat? And so the teacher who was teaching him said, well, those little crabs you see, you can eat that. You can grab it, and when you put it in your mouth, you have to bite down real quick, otherwise it'll run around inside your mouth. I
Hmm.
just thought that was an hysterical story.
Tips and tricks everywhere, just like that. You never know. You never know. Yeah. No. That's. I've been in that situation. I almost ate a couple of berries up in Alaska that my uncle was like, hey, those aren't exactly ripe, and if you eat them in 2 weeks, you'll probably enjoy them. If you eat them now, we'll be here doing something we don't want to be doing. And I was like, noted. He goes, but I like the instinct. I like where it's at. But so yeah, I come from a big hunting and survivalist family. Myself, I'm not a big hunter, but I went to a survivalist academy, like when I was 10 through 16. And so it's I know how to track, I know how to clean, I know how to camouflage, and I'm gun safe with a number of different weapons when it comes to getting out there. But it's really funny because everyone in my family, we mainly hunt with bows. Whenever I've seen my papa or my uncles go out, a lot of the times it's with a bow. So it's we're, we don't even deal with that. We just go nice and old savage raw, But no, yeah. And then so that, I have that background, but then on top of that, my older brother, from day one, you want to talk about Indiana Joe, my brother Benjamin, we used to get calls. I remember when I was knee high to a grasshopper, I remember our parents being hey, you got to go over to Di's house. There's a rattlesnake in her yard and they need it taken out. And Ben's like, okay. And so he was the guy that would go handle all the critters and be holding rattlesnakes by the tail and throwing them back into the desert and acting like it's no big deal. So we would go out into the desert, right on the edge of town, because we were in the housing developments. It was we're all right, yeah, we go past that road over there. It's just no civilization. So we'd be out there half the time. And I remember my mom didn't circle back around. We missed the drop in, and we got left out there for an extra 8 hours, and it turned into, well, we don't have a whole lot of water. What are we gonna do? And my brother quickly taught me a couple of different methods. So it was it was a lot of fun. It was you never knew what was going down, but now I feel basically prepared for everything. So
all right. So to conclude my section, would you be on a reality show like Survivor or a different kind of show? If you had to be on a reality show, it can be dancing, cooking, pottery, quiz show. What would Keegan do?
Honestly, it would probably be some sort of Survivor man versus wild, naked and afraid kind of deal, to be honest. I think that's where I'd be all right, yeah, drop me in.
No
if they
problem.
bring fear factor back, we'll see definitely, but either way.
All right, casting people, there you go. Keegan's ready. Thank you so much for being with us. I've learned a lot more about you, and it's been super fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate you listening to my rambles.
Yeah,
Michael.
well, I mean, I'm just thinking about Fear Factor. I don't want Fear Factor to come back.
That's what I'm saying. If there's a call, I'm sure, but
that was too much. But anyway, thank you. As I'm going to voice what Marcia said. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, you can come back again when you have some new stuff out that you want
Absolutely.
to talk about. But
what's next for you?
Yeah, what's next? That's
yeah.
Right now,
that you're allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I just signed on with a lovely new manager, and so we're getting a lot of really cool projects going. Besides that, my most recent project that just premiered is Merry Xmas again. You guys can find that over on Drama Short. That is actually my very first lead role. as well.
Okay.
So if you guys are looking for a little bit of holiday cheer and a good comedy of errors, go check out Merry Xmas Again on Drama Shorts.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Cool.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone, and we'll see you again another time. Bye-bye.
Ciao, everyone.